Welcome to our Increased Patient-Centered Care and Profitability pre-show, pre-event, where you can ask Dr. Travis Campbell and Dr. Paul Goodman. Dr. Travis, you're welcome to start your video whenever you are ready. Dr. Travis Campbell and Dr. Paul Goodman, and hopefully Dr. Todd Fleischman. Hopefully we'll get Todd out there. So Dr. Travis, we are going to have a fun time here. We have all of these people on Zoom, so impressed by people. We have a celebrity on Zoom. I can violate Zoom HIPAA for him. If I said to you, Dr. Travis, there is a dentist out there who loves dental insurance more than anyone else that you know. He's in the chat with us tonight. Whose name comes to mind?
It must be Marty.
The Tasmanian Marty. He can prep a crown so fast you can't even see it. That's a joke from Seinfeld. So he's in the chat here tonight. This is for you. We have people coming to our event. I have one of my awesome residents coming back to Philly. He's already made all of his dinner reservations. If you're coming this week to the Increased Patient-Centered Care and Profitability Conference in person, can't wait to see you. If you're watching with us online and getting recordings, that's awesome. I'm going to drop in the chat ways for you to do that. And save money on that, get a coupon on our recordings. But Dr. Travis, just orient people in case it's the first time they've ever seen Dr. Travis Campbell, author of the textbook that I have here. I carry around with me anywhere, everywhere, Travis, the Understanding Dental Insurance textbook. We are a sponsor of this textbook. It's gotten rave reviews from many people. Now, Dr. Travis, tell our audience, who are you? What do you do in your dentisting life?
So I'm a dentist. I've practiced dentistry for 13 years, and insurance frustrated me like it frustrated most people. But for me, I just sought out an answer, couldn't find much online. So did a bunch of research, did a lot of trial and error, and fixed most of the problems myself. So it's been a whole lot easier working with insurance now that we actually understand it. So our team likes a lot more. We have some day-to-day frustrations, but nothing like it was years ago.
It's a great point. I interviewed Dr. Gary DeWood, Executive Vice President Spirit, the other day. He said a lot of things you've said, in that if we make dental insurance a bad thing for our patients, they might feel bad. It's not how we want them to feel. It's for us to reframe it in a way that works for us in our practices, whether you're totally fee for service. I hope Todd Fleischman joins us later. Totally like PPOs, like you were totally out of network. I mean, it sounds like, Travis, at one point you thought insurance could be toxic waste in your practice, but you found a smarter way to deal with it. So these are some of the props that we have here. Smarties, the teeth-breaking candies from our childhood, Travis. So we have a question in the chat. And if any of these questions, Travis, you want to say, see a specialist for a reason about credentialing, you can see this. But this first question, because the point is for us to answer yours, is thank you for this webinar. You're funnier on this webinar than I thought, Dr. Nacho. He didn't say that part. I just made it up. I bought an existing practice, and I'll answer this too because I'm a transitions broker. What are strategies you recommend during the period of insurance credentialing? It will take a few months until I'm fully credentialed. So to set this question up, and this is a real weakness, I think, in our profession/industry, Dr. Salsa, the seller, sells a practice to Dr. Guac, the buyer. Dr. Guac, the buyer, is not in network with the PPOs, takes over the practice, and now the patient's in network. How do they deal with that? What's some of your suggestions, Travis?
Well, most honest answer is, and this is the one time I'm actually going to say, call the insurance company. Let's call the insurance company and ask, because they will have a process more than likely. They don't want to be processing you out of network because that means they'll be paying more. So most of them have a process. Some of them will say, file underneath the old doctor. Some of them will say, we'll get you credentialed pretty quickly, so at least we can get you in the system. They'll all have a different system. And the challenge is, with some aspects of dental insurance, there isn't a, industry-wide answer. They all treat them slightly differently. So call them and ask.
And that's a good point. As someone who is a transitions broker and deals with this nice anonymous attendee said something that's intuitive but could be dangerous. So I said, if I decide to bill under the seller agreed to do so until I get credentialed, would the patient coverage be different since I'm not in network? That is a nuanced question that incorporates potential fraud. So if you cannot bill under another dentist just because they said it. What Travis get is asking the insurance company. Sometimes they may make exceptions. They may not. This is really where you really need to ask them. I would not submit any claims. This is just my opinion, my experience. You can agree or disagree, Travis. I would not submit any claims under other dentist who's not me as a general rule. And then in this transition process, if you can get some type of exception, have you seen any of these exceptions, Travis?
Oh yeah.
Make sure you get that in some sort of writing and who the person is. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And, like I said, the insurance company has no interest in processing you out of network if the intention is to be in network, because that would mean they'd pay more. So they actually want to make this as easy as possible as well. So they're going to, try as much as possible to give you an easy route. Now, granted, working with any large corporation, there is no quote unquote easy route to anything. But it is the one time that, calling them and asking is not a bad idea. The other thing to think about is, we throw the term fraud around all the time, but fraud, if you look at its true definition, is in order to make more money from the insurance company. So if you're filing in order to make less money, you by definition can't be fraud.
And that's a good point, and that's why this. Would you agree with me outside of that the transition process for buying practices needs improvement, because this creates a big challenge when it should be something where there's so many things going on for this new buyer already. So really, this is also a time, and since this is not a CE webinar, we can totally share with you resources. There he is. Wow, the three amigos are on here. I'm going to get Todd in a second, but you can text PPO to 215-543-6454 to connect with our insurance negotiation sponsors. I want to share with everyone here. I didn't sprout out from a nacho patch like a Cabbage Patch Kid in 2017, Travis and Todd. I did exist as a dentist prior to that. And prior to that, I met an insurance negotiator, a one-man insurance negotiator band, who did this amazing work. We paid him, I believe, something like $5,000. And he got fees from an insurance company for us that were so great that we used until we went out of network. So I used the one-man insurance negotiation band. We also have ones in the Nacho network as sponsors, if you like, Campbell. But Travis, now I can kind of reveal some of your secrets, right? How reframing dental insurance in a more positive way, how did an insurance negotiation company help you with that?
They increased our fees significantly while we were still in network. So 4 years ago, we were out of network with all but 3 companies. And then we went back in network with pretty much almost all of them. But our fees went up quite a bit, and our collections actually went up by a whole bunch that same year that we switched, and profit almost doubled. So, there are ways to make it either way. My suggestion is, with everybody that's saying, don't be in network, I'd agree, don't be directly in network. If you're going to be in network, be indirectly in network with, third-party agreements, as opposed to, 40 different in-network contracts.
And I want to also highlight, as people come in and out and just watch a little that people can connect with you, Travis, to get personal consulting on this, right? If they're confused, what is the best website for them to go to learn more about what you do? I know you have a great subscription service. Share that with the group.
DentalInsuranceGuide.com.
Insurance guy. Awesome. So Travis, you are in network with multiple insurances. You work in Texas. Explain to us why you have the equivalent of one full-time GP in your practice.
So I work 2 days a week, and my associate works 2 days a week. So we're equivalent of 1 4-day-a-week dentist.
And just because our dental people, they're very literal, Travis, right? Very literal. They never color outside the lines. 1 inch outside the line, they freak out. How does that oral surgeon who comes in impact your production? So people just understand. Less
than 5%.
Right. So that's
we
why
do it because it's fun. He does some things that our patients can get that I don't want to do. We've had a lot of patients love it just because, they come into somewhere that's comfortable. They're used to, but he's such a small amount of the practice. We love him, but he's just numbers wise, just not a huge.
It's added fun, but of your 2.7 million, it's like, it would still be over 2.5 million without him.
Oh yeah. If he reaches 6 figures, it's pretty good year.
Awesome. And before I go to Todd, my BFF Todd, you shared something the other day, and we sent someone to an extraction course who loved it. and I have a course, Nacho on Demand C course on extracting teeth. Why do you believe extractions are so fundamentally important for dentists to know, especially the newer dentist?
Well, I mean, for one is you got to think about of all the things that we can help somebody with, the thing that is the most dire is something that's putting someone in so much pain that they can't sleep. That's a dying tooth or an infected tooth. Well, yes, root canals are one option, but not everybody can afford that. Everyone can afford an extraction. So it is the way that we can help the patient in their biggest time of need. Now, I mean, the upside too is from our side is extraction should be quick, easy, and relatively inexpensive. I mean, there's almost no overhead to an extraction. Almost everything we use is reusable, sterilizable. So there's almost zero cost, pure profit in extractions, unlike everything else we do that's got supplies and labs and all sorts of other costs.
And of course, know what to do and know when to refer, know what to do, know when to refer.
Absolutely.
But it's also for someone who's had multiple associates, and I'll probably mention a few thousand times how I encourage Todd to hire his first associate. It is the thing that people are really willing to do with your associate, because either A, they're in pain, or B, they don't want to leave the office. So if you say, hey, I used to do extractions, we have someone else who does that now, it's an easy way to get a win for your associates. Now I'm so thrilled to have Dr. Todd Fleischman on with us. He's going to meet Travis soon. Dr. Todd Fleischman, we just asked Travis, kind of just orient the viewers where you're sitting, where your practice is. You're so fee for service. People pay a year ahead of time. They run to your practice. They throw dollar bills in and they leave, not $100 bills in and leave. That's what happens, Travis. I've been there. Patients run up to his door. They throw money in, they leave. They don't even want the work. That's how fee for service he is. So Todd, tell us a little bit about yourself. We have all these people watching in. I'm amazed how many people are watching in.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Because I can't get my earbuds to work, and that's a complete failure for me. So I'm just.
I know that's not easy. I appreciate you're on even with your earbuds program. We can hear you fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No, I'm at my kitchen table, which doubles as a ping pong table in my house here in Center City, Philadelphia. 10-minute walk from my house on Rittenhouse Square, and so I'm right downtown in the heart of it, and getting ready for my first day of the week tomorrow because it was the Jewish holiday today. So I got to eke out an extra day off with my family, which was lovely.
And tell us, Todd, we built this whole presentation as one out of network dentist, me, one PPO dentist, Travis, one fee for service, Todd. You did a great podcast that you can share with me. It's been listened to hundreds of times. But what would you say one of the best parts for you about being fee for service is?
First, I want to say what's up to Travis. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too.
And I'm looking forward to hanging on Friday with everybody else too. I'm very much looking forward to it. What was the question again, Paulie?
What would you say one of the best? I always like to start off with positivity. You know me. What's one of the best parts about being fee for service? And awesome.
Yeah, so it really comes down to this for me. Is my father back in the day said, "Own your own business." And I never really understood what he meant by it. But later on, I realized it's because we don't like being told what to do. So the best thing about being fee for service is that no one gets to tell me what to do.
Yeah, and then I like that, Todd. Now tell us, even though you're fee for service, and I will talk about your history a little bit in the practice, but how many do patients ask about dental insurance in your practice? Does that word ever come up?
All day, every day. Yeah, it's not like we don't. And I tell them it's not like we don't take it. We're just not a participating provider, but we're happy to do all the work. And I'll talk about all that. We do all the work. We want patients to get value out of their benefits, right? But it doesn't guide my decision-making, nor should it, quite honestly, even if you are a participating provider. And, I have to tell you that the lecture with Gary DeWood that you did last week was awesome.
Thanks.
And, all the things he said was exactly right, which is just because you're in network, outer network, it shouldn't change how you're treating patients.
Right.
And bluntly, if you can get that into your head early on and not be inundated by this dogma that we're taught for some odd reason about what's covered and what isn't, or what we think is right and wrong, it's just about having the right conversations, which again is going to be a big part of our topic on Friday. Yeah,
words matter. I just want to breaking news. I have another guest here. I have a dentist waiting for insurance maximums to be increased since the 1980s. Here he is, 1980s is happening. So I'm going to actually throw this over to Travis because I like Travis, and you'll like him a lot too, Todd, because he's not afraid to kindly annoy me. Tell us, dentists get really mad, Travis, that insurance maximums have not increased. But you should say, hey, dentist, there's nothing to get mad about. And why is that?
Because it doesn't affect us at all. It affects the patient. It lowers their benefits. But here's the thing too, and it's interesting because here's one of the biggest lessons I learned from business from other people is do not change your practice. Do not change what you're doing. Do not try to change your systems based on something that's an outlier. How many of our patients throughout the year actually end up hitting their maximum?
Very few.
Across the country, it's 4 to 5%.
Fascinating.
So you're not talking about something that's going to make a massive difference. Now, I would actually say in reality, it's probably a lot higher than that. And we dentists are the cause of it, which I'll talk about this weekend. But in reality, for a majority of the cases, the maximum doesn't matter. Now, yes, on the cases it does matter, it sucks. But you're also talking about cases
and honestly,
usually
when
that
does
people
it
are
really
way over
matter?
max.
When does it really matter? You know, if we're
It's
doing
just a
anything
benefit.
comprehensive, anything more than a couple of teeth, which is the joke of it, it doesn't matter anyway, necessarily.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
sure, I guess if you're participating and you need to dumb down your fee, opting out or not, something that DeWood talked about, I don't know much about, but like, I get it. It still does affect you. It does. But, you know,
It affects.
to what degree, right?
Here's what it affects. I would take a guess, Todd, that you're probably pretty good at this, and most dentists are not, is treatment acceptance above a certain dollar amount. You know, most general dentists have a very low treatment acceptance when you go much beyond maximum, which really has nothing to do with maximum. It's more about once you go beyond $2,000 or $3,000, general dentists just have a bad time getting people to accept paying that. And it's all communication.
Right.
All communication.
Totally.
I like it. So that's what, one day they're going to sponsor me. I only drink 10 of them a day. It's probably not healthy. The aha moment brought to you by AHA is many patients do not go over their maximums. So quit on Rosh Hashanah, Todd. My grandma, quit yiking about it because 95% of patients don't. And when that happens with that patient, reframe it in the conversation. We have, and he won't mind if I violate Zoom HIPAA, straight from Boost Camp of August a couple of years ago, Todd. To be fee for service, it's very difficult unless you ooze big dentist energy like Dr. Todd Fleischman. A shout out from Mike Kleeman from Super Dentist Boost August. So let's talk about some frustrations of our models. So Travis, you have figured out a way to make insurance work for you. We've talked about don't get angry, get even, but everything about, Todd and I live in the city. It is awesome for us to be next to world-class restaurants 3 blocks from our house. That's awesome. It's also aggravating that we just can't let our kids go out anytime we want outside of our house. That's an aggravation, right? That's a trade-off. When I lived in the suburbs, I have to go to Applebee's, but I can let my kids in my backyard. Am I trading? Not anytime soon. But anyway, I digress. What's one of your frustrations of dealing with dental insurance, or just even a hurdle that you and your team have to battle? Because I'm asked Todd about some of his hurdles being fee for service. Like, what's a hurdle in the daily Travis practice with dealing with insurance?
Biggest hurdle is people come in with misplaced expectations. They think it's going to cover a lot more than it does. They think it covers things that it probably should, but it doesn't. Hygiene, probably the biggest one of those. Perio is, the conversation we probably have more than any patient. But at the end of the day, they're all annoyances. I wouldn't say any of them are frustrations anymore, because we've gotten used to them. I mean, it's the same conversation every day. I probably have a perio conversation at least once a day, dealing with why insurance doesn't cover, 4 cleans a year, or why it doesn't cover perio at 100%. I don't usually have as many with fillings, crowns, extractions. They all seem to not really care too much about those. It's all the perio.
Awesome. And I'm going to also just chime in periodically here that you can ask questions in the chat. You can give compliments in the chat too. That's allowed. That's totally allowed as well. Like Mike Kleeman, I violated Zoom HIPAA for you, Mike. So you'll be in this video forever. I share, and sometimes I've been lucky enough, Todd has these great meetings and sometimes my phrasing has made it to his board. I've seen it up there on the Fridays, but I just say, what's my insurance cover? That's a great question. A lot of patients ask us that. Dental insurance works a lot like a coupon that has benefits, but also restrictions like blackout dates for airline miles. We're going to do the best job possible to maximize the benefit of your coupon. Those 6 sentences. I actually have a business coach who's amazing, and she's been in the Oval Office a few times, and she had talked to Clinton once, and she said she practiced her first 8 sentences over and over again. So that's so key for your team. And then you can dive into details, but you just reframe it, because I'm going to show a video in a minute just from last week of a patient with insurance who's moved forward. Todd, what's one of the annoyances, the A words, annoyances, aggravations, hassles of being fee for service? It could be people unwilling to test you out. It could be, people saying the word on the street is Todd Fleischman's expensive. It could be any of those things. What's an annoyance you deal with?
Well, I think honestly, it's so funny because Travis and I are exactly on the same page. It's still expectations. It's just the opposite way. So the expectations of providing value, for what we're supposedly charging, right? And like the joke of it is, in reality, we're really not trying to outprice anybody. That's never our intention. And nor do I want it to be unaffordable for patients, but it's reframing the conversation of affordability out of the context of insurance-driven dentistry, right? And really just not regarding it, quite honestly, at all once we get past the conversation on the phone, which is why your team is so crucial.
Yeah.
So maybe another thing that's hard is finding the team, right? Like having a consistent team that allows you to manage a fee-for-service office. One thing I'm going to be talking about, which is wild, is that I had an entire hygiene turnover within a year. Last year, 4 hygienists, and I have 4 new ones this year. And hygiene is 42% of my practice. And how am I now booked out through the year? And how are we staying consistent? And all the peacocking things people talk about, but the reality of it is there's something behind that, right? There has to be something behind the ability to turn over what's almost half of my business within a year and still be able to keep the business rolling the way it has. And so that's what I'm going to try and pull out of people this weekend, right? So I'm going to try and share with them is the philosophy of what we do. It's not about the exactness of what we do, although that's part of it, but a big part of it, more of it, is the philosophy.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'll just add a story, and she still works with me. If I have time to show her video, because I just interviewed for 10 years. 10 years later, when we started, I went to a treatment plan, and my front desk team member was $9,000 for an 81-year-old. And she looked at me from another dental office and said, "Why are we doing this for her? She's going to be dead soon." Right. And I was like, I totally see where you're coming from, but here we want people to chew until they leave the planet. That was actually not mine. That was my we had a great office manager, satellite office, and they used to complain about fees. And he said, "Don't you want to chew until you leave the planet?" It was a great line. And that same team member now, 10 years later, presents $40,000 treatment plans with confidence, because I just gave her the training and the empathy to say, hey, I get where $9,000 for an 81-year-old is coming from, but it's their choice. So I think what you said, Todd, is key. And if you're a hygienist, I mean, they're the front line for your culture, for so many ways, because they have this, they're the team member that does the both clinical and business part. They just do it. It's infused into them, right? I mean, the front desk is talking about fees. They don't do clinical. The dental assistants are doing this clinical. The hygienists kind of get dragged into both. So it's really, really impressive. Anyone who wants to ask a question in the chat, we'll do that. Now I'm just going to go to a quick video I'd like both of you guys to watch. And when like the lecturers like show the pictures of themselves and it's like 20 years ago and they go, "You don't look like that anymore," right? You've seen those, right? Travis and Todd, we got to make sure ours are updated. Well, the other day I was showing a patient video from last week and people goes, "Oh, Paul, I didn't know you even saw patients," but I do see patients in my scrubs, in my office. So this patient had not seen a dentist in 20 years, came to us from our direct mailing campaign, which has been great. And because of this conference, Travis and Todd, I took the extra time and I said, "Can I ask you a favor? I've never done this before." So we all get our afters after we've delivered awesomeness, right? 10 visits down the line, they got the teeth and they talk about it, but this guy just met me. And this was 45 minutes later. And I said, "Hey, can I ask you about your experience here?" And what I want to share with this video is, this has zero to do with being in network or out of network, fee for service or PPO, because this patient has a very spoiled guac PPO plan. And he came in through our direct mailers. Let's just check in and listen to a little bit of his feedback. This was from last week. This patient came in, and here's what he had to say. Brand new patient, Joseph, amazingly nice person. And Joseph, you shared with me you hadn't come to the dentist in 20 years.
That's
I
correct.
jokingly said you were 65, I was 25 back then.
Yeah, right.
Now we're 85 and 45. What inspired you to come back to the dentist?
Primarily when the caps fell off the front of my teeth. As you can
Gotcha.
see right there, I felt enough is enough. I've got to get my teeth if I'm going to communicate with people.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have any relationship with somebody, you know, it's going to look terrible. I can't smile without covering up my mouth.
So I think that was a great idea. Come back to the dentist and
That's right.
see what's happening. Now, how did you choose this office? You're a new patient here. How did you find out about us?
Well, it had to do with the advertisement that I received in the mail, and it's this brochure, and it showed all the doctors there.
Cool.
And it had good explanation of everything, your expertise, your approaches, your different you know, treatments and so on. And I felt this is great. I've never seen anything like this. You know, it's a nice, colorful brochure.
Thanks.
It attracted me, and it gave all the information, page after page, and I liked it.
So it was enough for you to learn more, enough to
Right.
get a good sense of numbers. So then you
Right.
came in today for this complimentary consultation and
Right.
took a panoramic x-ray.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about, authentically, your experience with me in kind of explaining what was going on, the approach. Tell me about that.
Well, your approach was good.
Thanks.
It was very thorough and very hospitable too. I mean, you know, I really felt comfortable. So, and I enjoyed it.
I appreciate
And
it.
you went over all the details. You were quite honest about everything,
Thanks.
and that impressed me a lot.
Thanks.
And also seeing the X-ray after a while, explaining everything to me,
Yeah.
the technical points of it, and the good points and bad points, and that sort of sunk in. I really like that.
I
And
really
I
appreciate
know
that.
now which way to go.
So that's where I'll stop it there for a second, because that's the part where he says, I know now which way to go. And just for anyone watching, you can ask me any questions about this. I know a lot about Todd's dental life. I know some about Travis's, but does it matter so far, Travis, if I took this patient's insurance or not for this consultation?
Probably not.
Right. Todd, do you see people who come in with tons of problems for your new patient visit? I actually would like you to share. I don't do it the same way as you, but I'm very lucky to have a team of dentists, so I have the time to do the consult without being interrupted and without checking hygiene, because I know I've learned from Dr. Andrew Halbert, amazing perio pros, that once you give people your time on the first visit, they forgive you later. But if you sit with them and you develop that relationship, so nobody bothers me, no matter what's happening, and I spend, like, patient is all my attention. But Todd, tell us a little bit about your new patient visit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of, again, I'm showing all my cards early, but it's a big part of differentiating the experience right off the bat. Besides the phone, right, which of course we'll talk about, which is the first thing. But once they're appointed and once they're in the practice, having that first new patient experience with me and my team is really critical, so that they understand how it's going to feel different and how value is going to go hopefully further or just hit them differently than they did in the past. And so it's an hour with me. You know, we do a little getting to know you early on. I'm good at that. And so I've learned how to talk to a patient and get to know them and find something that we can connect with quickly. It's a comprehensive evaluation. That's I'm certain more than 99.5% of experiences patients have had in the past. It's a review of photos and x-rays right in front of them using technology that they may or may not have experienced in the past. It's followed by a secondary hour with the hygienist using ultrasonic.
So I'm going to interject, Todd. I always say I don't interject, I interrupt. I mean, I don't interrupt, I interject with good ideas. And it's really something I admire about you. And I know Travis's system is going to be different, but I referred my wife's friend to you, and you give that hour of your time to the patient unrelated to their dental needs. Could be small, medium, large dental needs.
I don't even know what their needs are until I meet them.
Right. So
that's a
I want the
crapshoot for
audience
me.
to hear that you give an hour of your time. I don't want us to really dive into specific fees right now
Yeah.
for the thing, but Then they go and see the hygienist and they get a hygiene appointment, x-rays, and they have your exam. Really, that hour of the time for you, based on your normal fee schedule, is at no cost to the patient. Is that accurate?
It's about half cost, right? Because ultimately, just we bring them in on a deal because I want them to get really true value out of their first experience. And what's so crazy about it also is that when we bill it to insurance, oftentimes they get paid more than what that first experience cost them out of pocket. So they actually get an idea of coming to my practice and not feeling like they're not getting value, right?
So that's what I want to pause you on is that I do my x-ray and consult for free, no cleaning for free. You do this magical time. Now, Travis, if you had this patient, I'm actually curious to learn from you, how do you process the new patient?
So new patient that's a hygiene patient?
It's interesting. You could tell me the difference because I do some of this. Not everyone gets this hour with us. When they come through certain channels of marketing, we don't put them through the hygiene program first. They just sit with me and we do the panoramic x-ray and consult. And this patient is now going to be, his next step is a hygiene visit and one extraction, a hygiene visit and one extraction. But let's say you have a patient who says, my front crowns fell off. I haven't seen the dentist in 20 years. I want to see Dr. Campbell's office. How do you guys process that?
That's straight through me. And it's very similar. It's an hour. Now we book an hour because sometimes it may take that long to talk about comprehensive care. Sometimes it may not take long at all to talk about a quick fix, and we just do the quick fix right there. So, if somebody's in pain, they usually leave out of pain. If somebody's got a broken front tooth, then we can do something fast. They, leave with that fixed. So they usually walk away either with a very good idea of what a future plan is, or they walk away with whatever quick fix they're looking for, at least to start with.
So you see three dentists with three different business models bonding together, use a dental term, over processing patients with significant challenges. I know Todd does all of his this way, in a way that gives them time, in a way that looks like, never loved these like 1980s business terms of like loss leaders, but as a way of bonding the patient with you. Like I've done these, Travis and Todd, and the patient says, thanks, but no thanks. I've done this, and the patient has done it all on 6 immediate load case with who Dr. Slough, who Todd knows. I've done this, and they've just gotten a cleaning and nothing else. But I believe that when you process the new patient with care and being genuine, you create raving fans of your practice. And I just think if you have any questions about it, let me know. Let's go to a question here for a second. Is it possible to have an efficient and profitable practice as a mixture of fee-for-service and PPO and give the same level of service? I only say this because patients, customer approach two different things as fee-for-service versus PPO. This is very on point for me, but I don't know if Todd could even answer because I don't know if he's experienced this maybe as an associate. But Travis, what about that question? Is it possibly efficient with the mixture of PPO and fee-for-service?
Well, can you do it? Yes. I would say it's a lot easier to be fully one or fully another because, with having higher fees, for instance, you've got to have the team that can hold on to those higher fees. By the way, Todd,
nice.
I got 2 of these.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's like a Winnie. It's like a Winnie mashup. Look at that.
So,
Nice.
These guys are 4 months old and they are super cute and cuddly. But when it comes to, the insurance side, wait, what was the original question?
I was sort of saying, can you have the mixture hybrid?
Yes.
I actually believe you can't, but it took me a while to get to can't. But you're sort of saying it's easier if you're in one lane or the other with your model.
Yes.
When you come here, Travis, and Travis is a night owl, Todd, so you guys can party to the break of 10 p.m. But I talk about Chipotle, which I eat at least twice a week. I talk about Alvez as like a fee-for-service practice, and I talk about Taco Bell, and all of those are models that are different. And I do think it's difficult as time gone on. I specifically was struggling with having a hybrid practice. I was struggling with having insurance fees that were 60% of what were listed. I was struggling with hiring new associates. I don't want any angry letters, but spoiled guac PPO that may or may not have anything to do with an airplane, paying my associates less than my brother and I. And it cost my brother and I hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 3 or 4 year period of us trying to make it work. Todd, I don't know if from your associate world you could talk about this, but do you think it's possible to have a fee-for-service PPO hybrid in the same place?
I worked at one for 2.5 years at my second job. I was a participating provider and my owners were not. And that was great for them because they were really affiliated with Jefferson and like a hospital-based system here in Philadelphia. And so they'd have tons of new patients who all wanted to use their insurance to the most of their value, to the most of their benefit or degree. And they've had their own patients because they've been practicing for 30 years who either didn't have insurance or didn't care about the benefit or had complicated care that realized, and these are smart people, they were physicians, they were professionals, that it wasn't going to be a catch-all. And so they sort of had a better of both model. I think the one challenging thing in those models is the administrative side of it, right? And so it just, you have to be able to manage that. I don't think they really cared. I think those patients did a lot of their own submissions. Yeah. So I don't think it was a hot button for them because it wasn't a super well-run practice. And so it wasn't like real service driven like mine tries to be. But they definitely had their niche. So I think it's possible. It just comes with its own pros and cons like every other model does, right? I mean,
I'll add as someone who lived it, it became impractical for me because if you think of the gap, the cement gap, how big of a gap can there be between the crown and the tooth? You want it to be as small as possible. Think of that with our fees. The gap between our listed fees and what insurance was paying was widening every year. And it got to be such a high gap. We did hire an insurance negotiator once, Travis, to close it for a small period of time. But the pandemic reframed my model. But I also want to share, I put 15 years into this profession. I've hired multiple specialists. I've done a lot of things to get to this point, and it's still difficult. So going fee for service reactively can be a really dangerous thing to do. Now let's go back to the insurance world, Travis, and let's use one here. I have this funny thing here. When we did send the letter, when we did go out of network, it was like a race to tell our patients, right? Because the insurance company kind of sends a letter that sounds like your dentist now hates you, right? I'm not joking. I mean, Todd has a legacy practice. I have a legacy practice. I've been there since I was born in my practice. I see my gym teacher from junior high. So when they got this letter from Spoiled Guac PPO, they called up upset, not even necessarily at us, Travis, just upset because it seemed like they couldn't come to the practice anymore. And we had to do a lot of fire extinguishing. I made an entire video on this. You guys want to get the video, just text insurance this. But Travis, tell us this a little bit about this with whether it's with your clients or yourself, how to deal with this. If you do shift status with the plan, because it'll probably happen to you one day, how would you manage that conversation with the patients?
Well, you've got to do it as a plan. I mean, if you're going to drop network and then try to do it, that kind of really sucks because now you give all the credit to the insurance company. They're probably going to beat you to the punch. Versus, I mean, here's the upside. The insurance company has no idea what you're going to do, what you're planning for the future. So how about you tell all your patients before it happens, before insurance can react? Now you can reframe that story. And then when you drop and they send those dirty letters, patients are already they're already expecting them. They're already expecting how to reframe them. And they're not nearly a big deal. I mean, I see it all the time online. I mean, Nacho's like almost weekly. Hey, we dropped insurance and they sent us just this dirty letter to all our patients. You know, what do we do now? And I'm like, well, now it's way too late. You know, now you're making excuses. So you've got to handle it up front and ideally in person. I mean, the relationship you build with people is not through an email, not through a letter. It's face to face.
And that's where the hygiene department comes in. And I mean, one of my things, I do the don't say this, you know, don't say a tooth's failed, say it's ready to retire, don't call tooth hopeless. I also say informed consent is like a heads up. So I always say to my hygienist, like, hey, let's give our patients a heads up that we may be shifting status with their plan. So they have a heads up, you know, for some reason, this surprise thing really just throws the human brain off, right? Where no one. But there's the funniest story. I bought a charts once of like a 76-year-old dentist who had a house office from our accountant, nicest man ever. He worked by himself. He answered the phone. His wife used to work with him. She gave up working with him, still married him. He answered the phone, no digital x-rays. We bought the charts. We sent a letter. People were showing up at our office saying, I can't believe Dr. Smith abandoned me. I go, did you see how old he was at the last hygiene visit? Give the guy a break. He's living at the beach now. But patients, especially in dental offices, get really thrown off with change. So I think your advice is awesome, Travis. Get ahead of the change. Be the one who talks to them about that. I have a question here for all of us, and I'll start with Todd. In our experience, how much does demographics play into where you can have your practice, fee for service, out of network, or PPO? Where do you think demographics play a role in your practice, Todd?
I think it works everywhere. I mean, I hear, they always say the best practice in the country, even these magazines, practice of the year. It's in the middle of nowhere, Omaha, Nebraska,
Yeah.
like somewhere where they have like all the real estate. There's no competition. They have these gorgeous fee for service practices. They keep it reasonable for patients. They're not trying to kill them. They have a beautiful balance between quantity and quality. Like, it can happen anywhere. I think for me, it helps to be in Rittenhouse Square in Center City, Philadelphia, in a community that I'm part of. That's part of the relationships that I build. A lot of my practice, I mean, I tell anyone who wants to listen that I was thankful COVID hit 10 years into me owning, because I had already established quite a bit of a city practice and people weren't coming from the burbs as much anymore, and that saved me. And so it really just depends on where you want to lay groundwork, in my opinion, for fee for service. Part of my lecture for Friday is pick where you want to live, because once you develop where you want to live, then you can figure out how to lay grassroots and how to like build the whole thing from the bottom up. I had an existing practice, so I'm sort of like, I was spoiled, and I'll tell anyone who will listen that that's the case. I don't presume to know how to start anything by hanging a shingle, but I can tell you how to grow 65% over a certain period of time doing what we're doing. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that, but I think you can do it anywhere, quite honestly, because it's about an attitude.
You said two things before I go to Travis. I want to point out that one, your humbleness. I want to talk about that in a second. But when you see a practice model that's running well, and then you purchase it and you keep it running well or better, you set yourself up for success. So there's areas across this country where you talk about, Todd, which they are doing, just example, $1.8 million with 50% overhead, but it might be in an area that's off the proverbial beaten path for dentists to live in. But if you take over that practice, you have this awesome opportunity to keep, I was on a Zoom over the pandemic with this real estate group, and a great group. And there was like 50 dentists. They're asking like, Paul, tell me about practice transitions and how to sell a practice. One guy's like, I'm in South Dakota. I make like $1 million a year. I can't find anyone to buy my practice. I go, how did you get there? They go, that's where I'm from. I go, well, that's the problem. You didn't just pick South Dakota off the map and say, today is the day I am moving to South Dakota. But if you're geographically flexible, there's some really good opportunities. But I also just want to share for a moment for Travis, because it's worth it for this video for the future. What year did you graduate from your residency, Todd?
05.
And Todd is really not ordinary, because there was a study club in the city where JSU just showed up, and it was expensive and he probably didn't have the money. And he was the youngest guy there. There's a podcast about this, but he didn't care. And he showed up at this study club and he held his own, paid the money, hung around with older dentists. And that really was a huge part of you getting this practice, Todd. Why would you encourage a younger dentist, whether it's with Dental Nachos, whether it's with Spear, to show up more at in-person CE? But maybe also this, why local in-person CE?
Well, first of all, it's like a life hack. A lot of these guys have already done the work for you, right? They already have practices. So what are you working so hard for? Like, a lot of these things are already going on. These are turnkey operations, give or take, right? And so, I bought a practice that was already around when I bought it, 102 years contiguously, which is crazy. Now it's at 120 or something like that. I mean, it's nuts. And so
you found this through ABC, Always Be Connecting. So how did you get connected with this practice that has been one of the best things ever happened in your life? How did that happen for you?
It was a specialty group that was doing continuing education, and my predecessor was a part of this group, and so was I. And the guy who ran the group said, my predecessor, Bob Kravitz, was looking for an associate because he had fallen sick, unfortunately. And Steve Brown, this periodontist in town who ran a great study club for many, many years and was very much a conduit to relationship building here in town before the internet, before it was easy to find things and do stuff. He had these great relationships. And so I piggybacked off that, which is what you're supposed to do. And so I think that what happens now is that the access to information is so easy that people think that you don't need to develop personal relationships anymore. And I think that's a fallacy. But
Yeah.
I'm old school. So,
But
despite
develop them locally. They
Yeah.
talk about, well, I'm going to get the slogans right. Think local, act globally. Go to in-person, see locally. I just did an event in New Jersey with a bunch of 50 to 60-year-olds, and there should have been more young dentists there, because that's the practices that I saw. So whether you love Spear and love Kois and love these things, flying out to Seattle is not going to get you your practice. Spend some of your time and energy going where you want to live. I did. Travis, tell us about the demographics for PPO versus fee for service. How big of a factor they play in your mind?
I think they're huge. I mean, for every business, you talk about location, location, location. I mean, whether it's online or brick and mortar, it's all about location. I mean, online is, your website, basically. In person is where you're living. I mean, you mentioned it, Todd mentioned it. It is really easy to build a practice rural. There is no competition. People have to come see you, or they're going to drive 100 miles to go see somebody else. It's really easy from a competition point of view. Now, it also brings into the idea that I think a lot of dentists are not being true to themselves, because I would say one major hallmark of a fee-for-service practice, especially when in a competitive area, is your relationship building skills, your desire to want to talk to patients outside of the office. Todd mentioned he wants to live where his practice is. I've heard so many dentists say they want to live somewhere outside of where their practice is because they don't want to see patients at the grocery store. I'm like, fine, I get it. I completely understand that mentality. But at the same time, that means you're probably telling yourself you're never going to be fee for service because you don't have that relationship building. I don't either. And that's the thing, is I don't want to talk to patients about their families, their kids, their cousins, whatever. I want to talk to them about their teeth. And that's it. And I know that. And therefore, I'm going to be true to myself. And that's why I went back in network and made it work, because I was getting annoyed by the patients that were, high relationship seekers and, talk my ear off about things.
Tell us,
that
Travis, I love
about.
this topic because I want to do freak each other out with their lives. Like that whole freaking, we're old, Freaky Friday, you switch roles. Like, what does Todd do? I mean, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram. He showed a great case yesterday. I'm always sharing Todd everywhere. And someone legitimately said, and I get it, they said, I never want to do a case like that, right? Todd redid this person's entire mouth, transformed her smile, spent a lot of time with her. From your person, whether it's personality, Travis, whether it's procedures, why do you not like that? Tell the audience, say, I'm a successful practice owner. I bring in over $2 million a year. I have a practice that I like for me, and I would not want to do what Todd does. Why is that for you?
Well, this is very close to me. And he does very high-end cosmetics. But I see the patients that he deals with. I've worked with a few of them. They're high needs. And if you're okay with that and you're happy with that and you want to deal with that, great. I don't want to deal with all the BS. I don't want to deal with the, trying to match, a color that's, a 2.254. I want to deal with A2. So it's build the practice that you want to build. And I think that's the important part, is if you're not true to yourself, you're always going to be fighting against your model and your systems and everything else. That's what causes, I think, a lot of dentists to fail. And it's the thing that, makes me amused all the time when people are like, oh, insurance is your problem, go out of network. I'm like, yeah, make sure that's actually going to match you.
Because you can't take Chipotle food and now turn it into,
No.
our town Top Chef burning food. Now, Todd, I'm going to go back to Travis. Why do you like that work? What was the training you did, and why do you enjoy it? You take the photos, you like the relationships, and like a firefighter of hassles, you run in there and you develop those relationships. So why do you like that life?
I don't know, man. I mean, listen, I still joke because I'm a general dentist by trade. Day in and day out, my bread and butter is still the single unit crown. So I get a kick out of it. I think the difference is a couple things. One, Travis is 100% correct. And I'm looking forward to this weekend a lot, because you got to know thyself. And I talk about it in my lecture. If you don't want to talk, if you don't want to build relationships, don't I don't think you can do fee for service personally, unless you're really on the middle of nowhere and they have no other options, right? So I think there is part of it that is definitely personality driven, and I'm driven like that. The other thing is, and what you realize as you get experience, is that when you're doing these more complicated cases, you need to work with high-end labs, because then you don't hate your life as much. If you try and do complicated casework with low-level laboratories, you will loathe high-level casework and you won't get at it. And that's why you need to be fee for service. It all works together. You can't do high-level cases and have them be predictable and use high-level labs if you can't charge appropriately. And when I put these big cases in, I don't worry anymore now. There isn't as much stress, because I know what I'm doing, and that's through training, which you have to do.
Oh, I'm timing out. You're perfect. So first, and I love this part about you, Todd, and it's true, but you are beyond what a general does if you go to your Instagram account. But I want you to share with people watching in, because there's no shortcuts to doing this. Conservatively, how much have you invested in these skills in your life, in the tens of thousands of dollars, to be hoist, spear, flying, doing
try hundreds
of thousands of
I
dollars?
paid for a residency for sure, a high-level residency for sure.
You've done all the spear courses, almost all of COIS.
Oh, I have one. I'm graduating from COIS this year.
So to be able to deliver this and deal with the results, it's part of what I'm going to talk about. Deliver the dentistry and deal with the results. Now, I want Travis to share why you would not like this, and this would freak you out, even though you're a high-level dentist. Travis, you did this thing that I thought was a good idea, and you wish you did it sooner. And you're like, I should have done this thing sooner. I'd have more money. I'd be happier. I should have done this thing sooner. I've only said it. What is that thing, Travis?
They're screws in the bone. I think we call them implants. Yes.
Learn to place implants, but because you do extractions you did a great post on Nachos. Which course did you take? I'd love to give him a shout out. Which course did you take on that for their implants?
AIE. They're based out of Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. And I mean, it's hands-on. It's a very low income clinic that, I mean, they work directly with BioHorizons to get the costs to, I think an all on four, there's like $4,000 total.
But how many years into practice did you take this hands-on continuum? At least 10, right?
It's 12 years.
12 years. So
I could
Travis
have easily done it 2 years out.
He invests in hands-on implants, and then you go back and you're doing it in your practice, right? You're placing implants, you're growing your career. You're not doing sinus lifts every day, but you are doing implant work regularly, right?
Yeah, I don't do sinus lifts at all yet.
Yeah. So
I do the simple implants.
Small, medium implants in your practice. Now, Todd, why would that freak you out? You ain't doing that tomorrow. There's no chance you're learning how to place implants. How come?
Well, I have an associate who's placing them in the practice. Right? So,
but even if you didn't have
like leading a horse to water and making him drink with this, like,
yeah. But even if you didn't have the associate yet, even prior to the associate, just because I just want to kind of drill down, pun intended, into your fee for service skill set of comprehensive restored dentistry. Phil Fava jumped on before when I was on live and things like that. Why do you say I'm not learning this myself? I'm collaborating with outside specialists.
Well, again, so for me, it was just part of my relationship outside of the office. So we have relationship-based dentistry, which is really inside your own practice. And then you have relationship-based ownership, which is really a combination of your team and your patients, but then also sort of what is outside of that scope, right? So your relationships with your specialists is really the biggest one outside of that immediate inner circle. And for me, just knowing the way I was going to practice, I wanted to make sure that I had really strong relationships with some of the best specialists in Center City, Philadelphia. And in doing so, that really instills a little, like a mini community. And that's the kind of thing where we start to collaborate and get really comprehensive, sort of extraordinary results, because unfortunately, a lot of the surgical stuff that's coming out of my practice is not basic, right? Or should be done out of a generalist office. And so I need the skill set of an upper level surgeon to manage. Now, I have Dr. Caro, who's going to be placing basic, like Travis, simple implants, because I do think, and I agree, that if I was going back now, you should know how to put an implant in from start to finish, do an implant restoration from start to finish, all three parts, surgical, abutment, crown, custom, whatever, blah, 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 this day and age. So I'm a little bit behind the eight ball, but ultimately I think it worked to my advantage for my model just because of how I practice.
Yeah, so this is just me sharing that we're learning from everyone here, and that what Travis does, Todd, is not up for him. What Todd does with high-level relationships, I'm kind of in the middle of this. We're going to do a few more questions. Since Travis is an hour behind, I can keep him extra, and Todd and I don't sleep anyway, so it doesn't matter. I want to keep a few more questions. If you would like to get the souvenir recordings of what we're doing this weekend for the best deal possible, text recording to 215-798-9897. It's going to give you the opportunity to have this information to learn, relearn, onboard new team members, and listen to us at any time. Now, Travis, this is for you. I have two good questions, one for Travis, one for Todd. How do you build a $2 million practice accepting most insurances, or is it all bread and butter? What skills would benefit new graduates the most if they wanted to be like you, Travis?
Communication skills by far. I mean, it does not matter what dentistry you do if you can't get a patient to buy it and buy it from you. So that's the number one. I mean, I have learned a whole bunch of things I don't do anymore. Todd said it was in the hundreds of thousands. I would easily say by now it's in the seven figures on how much money I've spent on CE and training and new equipment and everything else. And I'd say half of that I don't even use anymore. We did CAD/CAM and we gave it up. We did TMJ therapy and we gave it up. And that alone was like 400 grand. So but it's things that didn't work for me. It's things that just weren't for me. And I think some of it is I got into this mentality that is very dangerous online of it works for somebody else, therefore it must work for me. And not listening to that little internal, thing that's saying, no, you probably shouldn't do this. You don't like the process. It doesn't sound like it's going to match you. And I should have listened. So, I mean, I've probably wasted more money than most dentists on lots of things in training side.
But in general, I want to share with both you guys, and I want to share on this online here is I do like four things well, but public speaking is one of them. I've taken a ton of training on it. Okay. Ton of training. And How to Speak by Patrick Winston is 12 million YouTube views. It's phenomenal. Everyone should watch the target patient, but building a fence around your idea, knowing what your idea is and knowing what your idea is not is key. And really, those courses just made you define what your idea is, right? And your idea for your practice. Yes. It wasn't a waste. It was just defining what your idea is. I'm just going to show this video, not to compliment myself, but this is Ryan Robinson, Dr. Ryan Robinson. In 2014, he went to a course with me, well before Nachos. I talked about the 9 words to millions of dollars. He went back to his practice and his team said, what are you doing? All of these patients are saying yes to implants. And he looked at them and said, I just say what Paul told me to say.
And I can tell you, I took that to my practice on Monday morning, and I was rocking case acceptance. My case acceptance went from 50% to 90% just by using those magical words that Paul Goodman shared with me. So I owe a lot of my implant successes to Paul. Obviously, he's a very talented entrepreneur, and he gives us kind of the tools that we need to talk to our patients a little bit differently, because dental school arms us with a lot of information that doesn't necessarily translate into success.
So what's interesting is PPO Travis says about communication, out of network Paul says about communication, and Todd, for a new dentist early in their career, do you sometimes see them overvaluing clinical techniques before they have the communication skills to deliver those techniques?
I just wish people would just calm down, quite honestly. I mean, listen, there are some rock stars out there that we knew in dental school who were doing bridges before they left, roundhouses and all sorts of crazy stuff. God bless, that's an outlier. But most people come out and need to practice, work for somebody else, work for Medicaid, work for HMOs, work for big box stores. And they need to understand that it's a combination. You're practicing a couple things. You're practicing your clinical skills, certainly, to get your hands underneath you and learn how to use a mirror. Because, I mean, you can't practice like this for your whole life. So you have to learn how to use a mirror. And that takes time. And you have to actually practice. And second of all, you have to learn how to speak to people. We all know. I mean, I know traditionally the most successful general dentist in town here in Philadelphia until the past couple of years ago was someone who had good clinical skills, but was better at talking to people and ran the most incredible fee-for-service practice without the training that I've gotten, right? So words matter. And so certainly, I think it's really a combination. A new dentist really has to learn how to finesse, how to speak to patients, how to speak to their attendings and mentors, and what they need to learn and how to ask questions. But then also, of course, do the
do both. Learn clinical skills and communication
which
skills
is
at the
why
same
our
time.
job. And I tell patients this, and I'll leave with this because then I'm going to go finish Better Call Saul.
Sure.
But I tell anyone who wants to listen that our patients, especially, I tell, this job is ridiculously difficult, right? Like, we don't have to only do clinical skills with our hands on a micro level, wearing microscopes on our face with lights attached to them, okay, to be able to see things on a high-end level. But then we have to not only sell it to patients, so to be in sales, run a business, understand how to collect money and speak to patients about it emotionally, physically, psychologically. Most people aren't cut out to do it at a high level, which is why general dentists are caught in these averages of salaries that are less than $200,000 because they can't figure it out. They're trying to do too much. My attitude is consolidate a little bit, right? Use your energy and put it in a more laser focused way. And I have a feeling it's going to lead to better success.
I love that to focus on that. I'm gonna let you go, but Mike asked one thing: how difficult was it to bring in an associate or associates now? How did you manage it when people were there just to see the Todd?
Yeah, well, it's very challenging. We're going to talk about it. It still remains challenging. But just like it was when I came on, and no one thought anyone could ever replace Bob Kravitz. Literally, people thought that the practice was going to die. And I was like, I can't imagine that's going to be the case. And so just like that, it takes time. And there are going to be zealots who will not see anybody else. And those are the ones that you have the strongest relationships with. And you can say to them, and I have these conversations now, where like, if you want to keep your mouth healthy and allow me to also live my life at the same time, you have to be willing to let someone else see you. It can't, you have to be willing to go in for hygiene when I'm not there. I mean, I have patients who won't even go for hygiene when I'm not there. And that's wild.
And Todd, I think is what Travis shared with the 5%, and I've had to deal with this sometimes on my own terms and sometimes not on my own terms. With my dad's sudden death, we had to deal with this. And I like to be humorous, and I just say, Mrs. Smith, who am I to deprive Earth of just one dentist seeing your mouth? I want to share the joy of your teeth with someone else. They smile, and then I look at them in total seriousness and say, Ms. Travis, Dr. Alicia is someone from a GPR. I trust her to do this filling on me. It's very key. You have to put the procedure that you trust. I trust them to retreat the second molar endo on me. I trust them to do this crown on number 20 on me. And after the procedure, I would love your feedback. If you have any challenges, here's my personal cell. Now they feel special. You put yourself into the circle of trust, and you must do that for your associates.
I'd also just like to say, part of it is I didn't have an associate until I was 10 years in. Yeah. Right. And so I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that I built trust equity with these patients. Right. Mm-hmm. They knew, just like when I came on, that if Kravitz hired me, I must be all right. Well, that holds up on my end of the bargain too. Now, what I have to do now is make sure that I bring in an associate who is better than all right. And that's challenging. Anytime you onboard anybody is going to be challenging. But
and also patients sometimes have just ridiculously unfair expectations of another provider, and you have to recenter them, right? And having those difficult conversations gets you more time off, gets you less stress. Arguably the money part, I'm not so sure, but if you want to live a life like that, you have to be willing to have those challenging conversations. I'll finish up with Travis Todd for a few more minutes, but cannot wait for this weekend. So thanks so much for being on here with us. If people want to just follow you on Instagram, what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at Center City Philly Dentist. I'm easy to find. I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, I'm working hard on this lecture, guys. I really feel like it's got a lot to offer, and I think it's going to hopefully change some people's minds. We have an opportunity, you continue to build this community, Paul, that I feel strongly about, but we have an opportunity to shift mindsets. It starts slowly, but I mean, anything's feasible. I just think that we have to be open-minded, and I think this weekend's going to help.
We can't wait to see what you deliver to us, Todd. Really appreciate you being on here with us.
See you this weekend, Travis.
Can't wait for this weekend. Thanks.
Todd.
All right, guys. Thank you.
As Travis and I finish up, if you'd like to get the 9 words of the millions of dollars that I've taught this dentist, just text words to this number, 215-798-9897. Comes back with a video sharing how to do it. The one last thing I want to touch base on, Travis, was just the value of membership clubs in your practice. How do you utilize them? Because I believe membership clubs are something that cuts across PPO, out of network, fee for service. One of my regrets, Travis, is not doing one sooner. I totally missed the boat. Bob D's on here, so we'll talk a little extra for Bob. He's on here, so he's but membership clubs, we'll stay on for Bob for a little bit more. Bob, you can ask some questions too. I am sharing as a 45-year-old dentist who's bought multiple practices, dealt with multiple dentists, had great years, challenging years. I got letters saying dental insurance is going to pay me less, and I didn't have a Travis Campbell back then. I didn't have a PPO negotiator. I just cried inside, right? I got a letter, Travis, that said, we're going to pay the Goodman brothers $100,000 less next year, deal with it. And we had no idea how to change that, right? Membership clubs, I really regret not paying attention to them sooner. I saw them advertised. Tell us how membership clubs play a role in your practice.
I mean, because we're fully in network, they play a small role, but they still play a role. I mean, we've got cash patients who it's hard for them to see spending full fee. I mean, it is. And we have below average fees for our area just because, if anybody's ever going to complain about a fee, I want to send them online to look it up and go, oh, yeah, we're actually lower. But membership fees the reason insurance works, the reason insurance drives patients to seek treatment is it's a benefit that they have that they now want to utilize. Well, membership plan's the same thing, is now they have a benefit that doesn't come with all the restrictions that insurance comes with. And a lot of times can be less expensive and without all the blackout dates, as you say.
Yeah.
But it's a plan. It makes them want to use it more. There is a statistic out there that patients accept like 40% more treatment, spend 40% more money when they have a plan versus no plan. And it's crazy. I mean, and we're talking even not like in network things, not with discounts, they just spend more money because they feel the value. And that's,
maybe we could just pay attention. I don't know if anyone's heard of these companies, Amazon Prime, Costco, multiple streaming channels. And this is these are Nacho sponsors. I happen to use dental stores who I like, but there's numerous sponsors. If you text club to 215-798-9897, you will be able to find out how membership clubs can help you. But even the membership club founders, Travis, say DIY it if you're too cheap to hire someone, because it's better to have it than not have it. Why would you not DIY it? Here's why, Travis. I just want to ask you a question, why you would not DIY it. Have you made a record base in your office lately? Have you made one at night? Do you make
heck no.
Do you make custom trays? Okay.
No.
So I have zero judgment, but people who don't want to DIY things, they can ask.
Paul, I don't even reset teeth. If I don't like my teeth on a wax up denture, I knock them off, take a brand new wax, and then send it to lab and say, you deal with this shit. I'm not messing with that. No, It just takes too much time. My time is more valuable spent elsewhere.
So when people say you could DIY it with a spreadsheet, sure. I just encouraging you to really look into the magic of membership clubs, use the right rules, check them with all the regulations, but it's been an awesome one for me. Now, let's see, there's the name of the YouTube channel is How to Speak by Patrick Winston. And we'll just do a few lightning ones, Travis, and let's go with just fundamental.
I've got 4 minutes, Paul.
4 minutes, perfect. 4 minutes. Claim processing errors. What are the most common things that dentists are doing for claim processing errors?
You mean that are causing them? Lack of documentation.
Yeah. Whether it's lack of documentation?
Purely lack of documentation. Thinking that a X-ray of an amalgam that looks perfect and sending off for a crown somehow is going to get you paid for a crown. And again, it's this interesting mentality that we're doctors. Okay, great. That people should listen to us just because we're doctors. I'm like, okay, that's fine until you're asking for money. And now you've got to give a little bit of proof on why you're doing what you're doing. And especially when it's somebody who's never been in the office. Think about it this way. Probably the most difficult person that we ever deal with on a day-to-day basis is the spouse of a
Yeah.
patient who wants a lot of work and refuses to come to the office to learn about it. Like, well, how do you teach them the
Right.
value of what you're about to do on their spouse so that they will agree to spend the money? Well, here's the thing. They love their spouse. Insurance companies don't give a damn about their patients. So now you got to convince somebody who has no relationship with this patient to spend the money.
Right.
And that's the thing, is it's one step further than what we deal with all, every day, which is the spouse that hasn't come in. So we've got to give that documentation to show what we did and why we did it. That's
Good. I like that. Well, speaking of spouse annoyances, I want any spouse annoyances. We'll let you jump off, Travis. You're going to see you this weekend. People can get the recordings. Anyone who's hanging in here, I'm going to stay for a few more minutes and share a few things. But Travis, what's that website where people can get your dental insurance training and subscription? What's the best one for them to go to?
Dentalinsuranceguyde.com. I make it super difficult.
Well, thanks for sharing all this value, Travis. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you, Paul. See you this weekend.
Travis will be in town in Philly. Can't wait to see him. I send all major procedures for pre-estimates. Travis is not a fan of pre-estimates. We're still here. You can jump off, Travis, but he does not like pre-estimates. We still do them. We don't let
I'll tell you why this weekend, but no, they are
awesome. This weekend, Travis is going to, I like cliffhanger. It's like a modern day streaming show. Travis is going to tell you why he does not like pre-auth this weekend. I'm going to show you guys a few bonus videos here. I'll also give you guys some bonus content. If you would like a extraction course on surgical extractions, Nacho on demand, just text SWEAT to 215-798-9897. As I kind of get Nacho Studio put together here, I'm going to share some videos. If you want to put any more questions in the chat, please let me know. So thrilled you guys hung in with us. Hope you guys join us this weekend online or in person. If you would like to get the recordings for this weekend at the best price possible, just do this. If you want a recording this show, text DUNK to 215-798-9897. To get the recordings of this weekend, text recording to 215-798-9897. Thanks so much for hanging in here. I'm going to play a few videos for you while I get the studio cleaned up. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks so much for listening in.